It started with silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the earth itself is hiding something. Deep inside a forgotten cave, far from cities, far from people, a group of archaeologists brushed away layers of dust that hadn't been touched for thousands of years. Their tools were slow, careful, almost respectful. Because in places like this, one wrong move could erase history forever. At first, it looked like nothing, just another small fragment buried in the dirt. But then, one of them froze, because what they had uncovered wasn't just a bone. It was something that didn't make sense, something that didn't belong. And the moment they realized what they were looking at, everything changed. What nobody expected was that this tiny discovery would challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. Because sometimes the smallest things hide the biggest secrets. And this bone, it was hiding a story the world was never meant to hear. For years, this cave had been nothing more than a rumor. Locals spoke about it in whispers, a place where strange things had been found before. Old tools, burn marks, unusual carvings on the walls that didn't match any known civilization. But no one took it seriously. Until now. The cave was located in a remote region, surrounded by rough terrain and harsh weather. It wasn't easy to reach, and maybe that's why it stayed hidden for so long. When the archaeologists first entered, they didn't expect anything groundbreaking. They thought they'd find the usual, maybe some animal bones, maybe signs of early human life, something ordinary, something explainable. But the deeper they went, the stranger things became. The walls weren't just natural rock formations, they had patterns. Not random, but intentional. Almost like someone had carved them with purpose. And then there were the tools. Primitive, yet oddly advanced. It didn't make sense. It was like this place belonged to a timeline that didn't match anything we knew. But still, nothing prepared them for what they were about to find. Because hidden beneath layers of hardened soil was that bone. Small, fragile, but different. Very different. At first glance, it looked human, but only at first glance. When they carefully lifted it from the ground, they immediately noticed something unusual. The shape wasn't quite right. It resembled a finger bone, but the proportions were off, slightly longer, slightly thicker, and the structure, it didn't match any known human species. That's when the real investigation began. The bone was taken to a lab for analysis. At this point, the team still believed there was a simple explanation. Maybe it belonged to an unknown branch of early humans. Maybe it was a rare mutation. But science has a way of revealing truths we're not ready for. And when the DNA results came back, the room went silent. Because the data didn't match modern humans. It didn't match Neanderthals. It didn't match anything in the existing human family tree. This bone came from something else. Something we didn't even know existed. And just like that, the story shifted. This wasn't just a discovery anymore. This was a mystery. But here's the twist. The deeper scientists looked into the DNA, the more unsettling things became. This wasn't just a completely unknown species. There were traces, faint but undeniable, that suggested interaction, connection. Somehow, this unknown being had crossed paths with our ancestors, and not just crossed paths.
Their DNA had mixed, which meant at some point in history, they lived together, side by side, breathing the same air, walking the same earth. But if that's true, then why is there almost no evidence of them? Why are there no cities, no clear fossils, no records? It didn't add up. And that's when the theories started. Some scientists believed this could be a lost branch of humanity, one that existed quietly, away from the main civilizations. Others thought something more dramatic had happened, something darker. Because history has shown us one thing again and again: when two human species share the same land, only one survives. As researchers continued their work, they went back to the cave, this time with a different mindset. They weren't just looking for artifacts anymore. They were looking for answers. And the cave seemed ready to give them more. Hidden deeper inside, beyond narrow passages and sharp rocks, they found more remains. Teeth, fragments of bones, pieces of something bigger. And every single one of them carried the same strange signature, the same unknown DNA. But what truly shocked them wasn't just the existence of this species, it was their capabilities. Because alongside these remains were tools, but not the kind you'd expect. These tools weren't crude or random. They were precise, carefully shaped, almost advanced. Some had perfectly smooth edges. Others showed signs of polishing techniques that shouldn't have existed at that time. It was like discovering modern craftsmanship in an ancient world. And then came the most chilling part: the markings on the cave walls. At first, they looked like simple carvings, but under closer examination, patterns began to emerge. Symbols, repeating shapes, a form of communication, a language, maybe. And if that's true, then this wasn't just a species. This was a civilization, a hidden one. What nobody expected was how far this mystery would go. Because once the discovery became public, other researchers around the world started re-examining old findings. Bones that were once ignored, artifacts that didn't quite fit. And slowly, a pattern began to form. Similar traces of this unknown DNA were found in different parts of the world: Asia, parts of Europe, even remote islands. Which meant one thing: this wasn't a small, isolated group. This species had spread. They had lived across vast areas. And yet, somehow, they vanished. Completely. As if they were erased from history. But how do you erase an entire civilization? That's the question that still haunts scientists today. Some believe it was climate change, a sudden shift in the environment that they couldn't survive. Others think it was disease, something that wiped them out slowly, leaving behind only fragments of their existence. But there's another theory, one that feels uncomfortable. What if they didn't disappear on their own? What if they were replaced? Because around the same time this species vanished, modern humans were expanding, growing, spreading across continents. And history tells us when resources are limited, survival becomes a fight, a brutal one.
Could it be that our ancestors encountered this advanced species and something happened? Something we don't talk about? There's no clear evidence of conflict, no signs of war. But the absence of evidence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it means the story was never told. As time passed, the emotional weight of this discovery started to sink in. Because this wasn't just about science anymore. It was about identity, about understanding who we are and where we come from. Because if this species truly existed, and if their DNA still lives in some of us, then they are not completely gone. They are a part of us, hidden, silent, but still there. And that realization changes everything. It means human history is not as simple as we thought. It's not a straight line. It's a complex web of connections, encounters, and lost stories. Stories that were buried,
just like that bone. For the archaeologists who made the discovery, life was never the same. What started as a routine excavation turned into something much bigger. They weren't just scientists anymore. They became witnesses to a forgotten chapter of humanity. A chapter that raises more questions than answers. Who were these beings? What did they look like? How did they live? What did they believe? And most importantly, what happened to them? Because somewhere out there, beneath layers of earth, more clues are waiting. More bones, more evidence, more pieces of a story that refuses to stay hidden. And maybe that's the most powerful part of this mystery. The idea that history is still incomplete. That no matter how much we think we know, there are still secrets buried beneath our feet, waiting, watching, ready to be discovered. Because that tiny bone, the one that changed everything, is just the beginning. And if one small fragment can rewrite history, then imagine what else is out there. Imagine what we haven't found yet. Or worse, what we were never supposed to find. So the next time you think about human history, remember this: we are not alone in our past. We were never alone. And somewhere in the shadows of time, there are stories still waiting to be told. Stories that could change everything we believe about ourselves. All it takes is one discovery, one moment, one bone, and suddenly the truth doesn't look the way it used to. And maybe that truth is far more mysterious than we ever imagined.